cold where I am. I don't know about you, but I'm really ready to move south a little bit.
Well, we are really excited to bring on a co host today, Arden, who you see with us. But before we introduce Arden, we're going to go to our new news. Are you ready?
I've been waiting.
All right. You know
What do you
what,
have,
Denise?
Ginger?
This time I did not post it before the podcast because I
You
really
knew my
cannot.
trick.
I knew your trick. Yeah. So, for our new listeners, one of the elements of our podcast is to bring you breaking news, which really is information that might help midwives and organizations that support midwifery really keep in touch with what's going on. And this dropped yesterday.
All right, Ginger, what is it?
From our good friends at the Bureau of Health Professions, which is of interest to midwives because oftentimes we can get our student loans paid if you get in a placement area of a federally qualified um, designation location for primary care and maternity services. And just a tiny little snippet of why this is important. In 2015, one of the highlights of my career was testifying in DC in front of the Energy and Commerce Committee. I have a picture of it behind me. It was like, holy crap, what a wonderful thing to be able to say you got to do, testify in Congress. The hard part was you also have to answer their questions. But it was representing ACNM and ACOG on maternity care designation shortage areas. And
Ah,
before 2015, the designation areas were only primary care and dentistry, which midwives could fall under primary care.
mhm.
However, opening up this new definition allowed more funding to go to maternity care shortage areas. And lo and behold, um, we're now in 2025, and it was only a couple years later where it went through all the bill signing. In fact, Trump signed it, appropriations, it was funded, and now for maybe two cycles, we have had this new definition for national health loan repayment. Well, yesterday, the Federal Register posted modifications to the definition of maternity care designation shortage areas. At the same time, these things are all colliding. Katie Cozumel, PhD from the University of Minnesota, the most widely published researcher on maternity care shortage areas in America, dropped a brand new article yesterday on what's happening in rural America for maternity care. And HRSA is trying to change the criteria by which the points are assigned to the definition. So, you know, one of the things they took out? Guess.
Midwives.
No, we're still there. We're still
Okay.
there. Let's think equity.
What did they take out?
In their new scoring method, they took out social determinants of health.
Well, of course. I guess that it didn't even feel like the right answer because it's the most obvious answer
Why would
of
they
what's
do
going
that?
on.
Yeah, why would they do that? I mean, I was shocked.
Here
I
we
was
are
shocked.
again.
I was shocked.
I
Um,
thought you were going to give me some good news.
well, it's gonna be my call to action at the end of the podcast. What they have done is insert things like the ratio of females that are childbearing, which is not bad. The time it takes to get to the nearest provider to provide the necessary care. How on earth do you calculate that? Who's calculating that?
It depends on who's driving, right?
It depends on if you're in. We went to the Acadia National Park and I protested with Linda Robinson on the town square. And during the high seasons, to get into that park, to get in and out, and
Oh,
the whole island is populated with the service industry. It could take him an hour and a half to get off the island now to the nearest hospital where they can have a baby.
So yeah, very, very, very many variables, which they, I'm sure, have explained in great detail about
Oh,
how that
yeah.
occurred, right? Great
Yeah.
detail.
So, what's interesting to me is there's a 30-day comment period. So, I would say to everybody, if you're working in a federally designated HIPSA area, health provider shortage area, you have to look at this and provide public comment because I think it could change the landscape of the priority need. Although their attempt, I think, is to focus on the rural health transformation money that's gone out, which is gazillions of dollars for states to implement. I don't know.
Sounds like your call of action is coming early, Ginger.
I think it is. But
We'll
this is a
repeat it
this is
later.
a really big deal for midwives and their employers to really look at this comment period and not be shy. Like, use your voice, man. Tell your story about what's going on because these rural healthcare areas are so wildly different. Like, my daughter in law in Clay Center, Kansas, which is rural, is very different than out in western Kansas, that is rural, with no OB providers like west of Salina.
Yes.
And so a rural healthcare area is not a rural healthcare area, and yet we're now trying to call them uh, by a point system. I don't know. To me, it seems like it's being restrictive. So anyway,
Well, I
that
can't wait to read that,
that is
actually.
the that's the breaking news, and I'm going to put the link both to Katie Cozumel's article and the registrar commenting link for folks. So anyway,
Perfect.
let's move on into our guest who's here patiently waiting, who lives in rural.
Yes.
She lives in rural Iowa.
So happy to
Denise,
have you.
why don't you introduce her?
Well, I would like to introduce Arden, Arden Schwenker. She is simply a coder and biller extraordinaire. She has a lot of initials, credentials after her name, which I don't actually, I haven't memorized them because I'll let her tell you about those. But suffice it to say, we learn something from Arden every time she talks. And you'll probably hear her say, it depends. That's her tagline. So hashtag it depends. So here you are, Arden. Thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. My first podcast, so even more exciting.
Oh, you're doing well.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hey, Arden. You know what I think our listeners would really enjoy is for you to sort of tell your story and how you found us.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'll give the abbreviated story in essence of time. But in 2010, I underwent treatment for breast cancer. And at the time, I was commuting roughly an hour and a half each way for work. And my husband was like, done, enough. It's time that you find something else. And he knew someone who had a friend who worked from home for a billing service that worked with midwives. So I applied for a part time position doing verification of benefits, fell in love with midwifery care, billing for midwifery care, the business side of it, and advanced my way from part time verification of benefits to full time director of operations. In 2021, I decided that I wanted a slower pace in my life. You'll laugh later. Um, and resigned from that position and started doing consult. Well, my dream was to do consulting. And I knew Leslie Rathbun because she was a client at my previous job. She introduced me to Ginger, and history was made, I guess. The rest is history because I started working part time doing some consulting, which then again became full time, became a partner in Grow Midwives. Then we started GM Billing and Recovery Solutions, which is our billing service. And I no longer have a slower pace in life,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is totally fine because I absolutely love what I do.
Boy, do we know that, huh, Denise?
We do know, I was just reading, it doesn't matter the money that you're making at your job, but that you love doing what you do. But I think actually both are important. I'll just put that in there because Barden's job is a lot about getting the money.
It is. It is. And you know, Arden, I think one of the things I learned as you came on and you were involved in a lot of our consults with clients before the billing service ever started
Mhm.
was like every single time I'm like this woman is like in the baseball world where fans like have memorized the cards of all the players on the team. It's like, how does she know Alaska? How does she know New York? How does she know Florida? Like the your ability to retain information based on your experience specifically in OBGYN billing services and for different provider types blew me away.
Oh, well, thank you. I don't
Blew
know,
me
my
away.
brain just memorizes random
It's not
information
random. It's not
It's
random.
and I've just put that to good use in learning the different rules in the different
Yeah.
states.
But why do you care that much about midwives and their knowledge and protecting them? You're not a midwife.
So, no, it started out with me wanting to make sure that every single pregnant person was able to have their baby where they wanted and have insurance pay for it.
Yeah.
That's how it started out, was advocating that way.
And were
And
those, when you say where they wanted, was the preponderance of your billing experience out of hospital?
yes, it was home and birth center. In the
Okay.
beginning, it was out of hospital. So home and birth center. And learning the different laws in each state, the different rules in each insurance company, and helping people advocate so that their insurance would pay for their birth where they wanted their birth to happen.
Yeah.
That's how it started.
Wasn't
And
that a
so,
bit
then
frustrating?
it was super frustrating.
yeah.
But it was also extremely rewarding when you would win an
Yeah.
exception so that somebody could have a home birth or a birth center birth. That was extremely rewarding.
I
Then I
have a question
started,
for you, Arden.
okay,
A little further. Like, as Simon Sinek always says, what's the why though? We know why, but why? Why do you care about pregnant women and their
nobody's
birth
ever
experiences?
asked me that. I think the simple answer is in it became more when I started talking to the midwives and learning more about why midwives do what they do and how much
Yeah.
they care.
Yeah.
I literally fell in love with midwifery. And I wanted to be a midwife, but I didn't want to go to school to be a midwife
There you go.
because I wanted to I saw the need on the business end and helping practices be successful.
You
And
know
I
what?
knew
You know
that's
what?
how I could contribute.
Denise, I'm gonna expose something about Arden, and I have some insight as I hear her talk more and more. And all of us have gone and bought cars, right? We've all bought a vehicle. The person, you were the last stop, man. You were the finance person in an automotive industry where the game is to buy, the undercoating and the tinting on your car and the extra insurance. And you're the person everybody's terrified to talk to. Man, you've got some, what did Lonnie Morris call it? Chutzpah?
Chutzpah or something.
Chutzpah.
Chutzpah.
But
You got some balls, man. I'm sorry.
The
well,
ovarian balls.
Ovarian balls.
very
So, I
exactly.
mean, I think you've got attributes in the business world that looks for, I'm not saying that was a dark side. I'm just saying it's a skill.
I think you're right. I think that starting my career in the automotive industry at 20 years old while I was still in college and working in an industry that's predominantly male,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
that really, I don't know, it just molded me in different ways. But I think that now working in an industry that's predominantly female and working with more with midwives and my it allows my nurturing side to come out versus my more aggressive
Yeah.
Financial side.
dominance financial side. I just nurture in a different way.
Yes, we love it.
Yeah, we do. And we
We
all
love it.
bring our life experiences into our careers. I think that's a fair statement.
Hmm. I think so.
Perfect. Now, I cut you off from what you were going on to say afterward.
I think just morphed into what I was going to say, and that's
Excellent.
in working, falling in love with midwifery and working with working with the midwives made me take a step back and realize that the advocacy needs to go from both sides,
Yeah.
the parents and the midwives, and that any healthcare provider, but especially my passion is women's health, as we all know,
Yeah.
need to know the business end and
Yes.
where the money
Yeah.
comes from.
Yeah. Denise,
Hmm.
our profession doesn't understand this.
No, I say it over and over again, like midwifing the midwife. So yet you're yet another one, Arden, that is doing that role, and I very much appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm trying to think, Denise, how we can approach today and really help the listeners, especially the midwives in active practice and the students, um, understand key components beyond the point of care, right?
right.
You step in the office, you take care of the patient, you say goodbye, you chart. I'm done. Check. That's not the end of it.
Well, it's also not the thing that anybody is really educated about in their programs. It really always is a focus on, assessment, diagnosis, writing up, documentation. And the documentation is supposed to be specific enough to create, the billing, the coding and billing
Yeah.
component. So we get that information all the time in our educational programs. But then there's a stop where we don't learn about billing codes. We don't learn about, you know, E and EM, extra add-ons, and we don't really know how to navigate those necessarily when we get out. Sometimes we enter into a role where we do have at a bigger institutions where they do, make sure that you are learning how to do it, and they have, where they review it every month or every 2 months and or every claim so that they can teach you along the way, or they do a review after 6 months to give you tips and tricks. But it really, not everybody gets that in all of their settings.
Right.
And I think this
Right.
is what is a huge gap for midwives that are not only coming out, but have been doing it for a long time to learn how to do it correctly to prevent fraud and abuse. We all know that does unfortunately exist unintentionally most of the time. So how do we roll Arden into
Why don't we
helping
start
us?
there? Why
Okay.
don't we start with this notion of Denise, you've just seen me and now you've got to enter information. And Arden, it does start at that point. What tips could you give listeners on how to compliantly code and maximize their revenue?
Well, I think it, like you both just said, it starts in the visit. It starts with charting what happened in the visit. Because if you don't chart it, even if you did it, if you never chart it, it never happened. In the eyes of the coder, the biller, the claims, the insurance company, anything that's not charted didn't happen.
Oh,
The
we
other,
learned that lesson. We learned that lesson, really not even related to coding and billing. We learn it in that's the one thing that is, hounded into us all the time. So that really does continue to go into the billing role. So that's great.
And one of the things I notice in chart reviews is oftentimes it's the little things that are missed, like you inserted an IUD and you charted that you inserted the IUD, but you missed charting the lot number or the expiration date or the NDC code. And in a larger practice where you're scanning the code and it goes right into Epic, that's not important. But in a smaller
Yeah.
practice where you're not using Epic or Cerner, where you're using different software, it's extremely important that those are in your notes. Same with total time spent. In a larger practice where you're using like Epic, it's going to have your countdown. You know how much time you spent. But in a smaller practice where you're using client care or maternity neighborhood or even like eClinical Works, it's not counting your time. So you need to make sure that your notes include total face-to-face time, 39 minutes.
And what if these things are missing, Arden? What if you don't have the lot number on your IUD? What if you
You
don't
can't
chart
bill
total
it.
time?
You can't bill it. If you don't chart in like a procedure in IUD, for example, if you're missing the lot number, the expiration date, the NDC code, it's not billable until your biller has that information, because the lot and expiration date don't go on the claim, but the NDC number does.
Mm.
Total time spent, if you're billing global maternity, it's not as important. But if it's not a routine prenatal, or if it's a visit for a problem, a women's health care visit, or with the new codes maybe coming out in January, everybody's going to have to chart total time spent
Yeah.
at every visit.
So
So you might as well
so
start now.
how's the midwife going to know? I mean, if and it could impact revenue generation, right? And
Hmm.
how aggressive the billing team is in that practice. Like
Yes.
Denise said, what would you recommend be a learning or an ongoing audit process for people who bill, provide services that are billed?
I think that whether you're in a large practice or you're in a small independent practice, that you need to ask for feedback from your biller. Ask for an audit of your charting. Ask for an audit of your billing, your charges that you're dropping. Or if in a larger practice, you may be already getting that feedback. You may be getting it, like Denise said, monthly, quarterly, or even on the claim from, especially if somebody else is coding your claims. You're going to get that feedback typically from your coder.
Yeah.
In a smaller practice, if your in-house biller or your remote billing service is not reviewing your charts and giving you feedback on your charting and your charges you're dropping, they are doing you and your practice a disservice.
So, you and your team have done some audits for different types of entities, from FQHCs to private practices to even large hospitals. And tell our listeners a little bit about what you discover in those audit processes.
One of the audits that we did, we discovered that a claim from the midwives had not been submitted in over 9 months because the biller didn't understand that billing for maternity care is billing for maternity care. There are different nuances in reimbursement, things like that, but the global concept is the same. And the biller didn't understand. There was some animosity between the biller and the midwives, and the biller just chose not to submit their claims for over 9 months. It was millions of dollars of
Oh
revenue
my
that
gosh.
had not been billed, that was outside of timely filing from the insurance companies
Oh
that
my
they would
gosh.
never get paid for. We've
Yeah.
discovered that people don't know how much revenue they're producing.
There you go.
Ginger and I met with a client who needed, like, they were needing to basically prove their worth, and they had no idea how much revenue they were generating, and just their billing was over $1 million per midwife per year. And it was, I don't remember how many millions
Yeah.
of dollars
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
were they were generating, and their salaries were like
Yeah.
20% of that
As a practice,
as a
millions.
practice.
Denise, do you know how
I,
much revenue you generate per year?
I not specifically. I mean, one bit of information that sheds light on what we do is when we do the ACNM benchmarking
Yeah.
report, we do have some of that information, the wRVUs and also the counts, billable. And I probably am not saying it in
Accounts
Arden's correct
charged. Accounts
accounts
charged.
charged. So we do have some idea, not myself, and they did kind of split it out. Sometimes they do it in a group, but they split out the midwives. But it's myself in learning, I learned that sometimes they forget to put all the midwives that are in the group.
Yeah.
So the information has to be really reviewed if you do look at it, if you do receive it, and make sure that they are counting all of the midwives and just that all the bits of information are there. Otherwise, bad data is bad data. It doesn't serve much purpose. So, but I was also listening to you, Arden. So, like the issues are one, midwives aren't really aware necessarily of how valuable they are, how much they're billing. Um, and the other side is that midwives are not valuable if they're not being billed for. In fact, their services are valuable on an emotional level, but financially, well, they're not proving their worth if they're not being billed for. What else do you see happening?
We also see like inappropriate incident to
There we go.
billing,
Illegal billing.
whether it's in a smaller practice or in a larger practice. And larger practices, especially hospital-based practices, are more complex because you have to take into consideration the contract, the bylaws, different things to know whether or not an incident to does not apply in an institutional setting, in a hospital, in a birth center for the facility. Incident to is only applies in a clinical setting. So what we see are the claims being billed in a dual practice. Let's look at first OB-CNM, where all the CNM's claims are being billed under the OB. Well, that is in a clinical setting, that's appropriate incident to billing if the OB is present in the office while service in the office suite, not in the exam room, while services are being rendered, if both parties are on the contract, if the contracts allow for it, that's appropriate. We also see where a CPM is billing incident to a CNM. That is never appropriate billing because the CPM, unfortunately, is not recognized as a credential by CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which means they're not, in most states, they do not have the ability to be credentialed. Without that credentialing, you cannot bill incident to. And if you're taking it one step further and it's a dual practice CNM, CPM, and the CPM is doing all the deliveries and not credentialed with the payer, that's just fraud if the CNM is not present.
So there's a lot of ifs in here, and we want to make sure our listeners realize those are very important qualifiers because there are some states, Arden,
Mm-hmm.
where third-party commercial payers reimburse CPMs.
Correct.
Can you
Yes.
name some of those?
Alaska, Washington State, Oregon. Um,
They're
I know
clustered
there's
up there in the Northwest.
Florida, but it's mainly the Pacific Northwest
Yeah,
and then a few other states.
yeah,
Minnesota reimburses CPMs.
yeah. So what I think I've heard you say in the past you see, and a lot of CNMs do this as well, for other reasons, like not wanting to pay malpractice insurance, which a commercial carrier is going to require, is cash
Mhm.
pay. correct?
Correct.
So, do
Yes.
the rules change when you do cash pay?
If you are 100% cash pay, you do not accept any insurance at all. You do not give your patients a super bill to submit to insurance on their own. Strictly cash pay, insurance rules don't apply. Incident to billing, fraud, waste, and abuse, HIPAA still applies. HIPAA applies to
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
but the rules for reimbursement do not apply if you're 100% cash pay.
So, you just said something, Denise. I told you I was going to learn from her. She just said something that I didn't realize.
What was that, Ginger?
She used the word super bill. If you don't submit, if I don't give you a super bill, Denise, to submit to your insurance company, talk more about that, Arden.
So if you are giving a client a super bill to submit to their insurance company for reimbursement that has your MPI number, your
Place of
procedure codes, your
business.
diagnosis codes, any what you would submit yourself for billing, if you are giving that to your patient to submit themselves for reimbursement, you are billing a claim. Whether you are submitting it or your patient submitting it, a claim is being submitted. And if you're submitting a claim with a provider that didn't render the service, in order to receive reimbursement, whether you are credentialed with the insurance or accept insurance, it's still insurance fraud because by giving that patient that super bill, you are
Did you know that,
falling
Denise?
I did not.
under the insurance guidelines.
This is so complicated.
This is complicated.
And we have a lot more midwives, which we celebrate, starting their own businesses.
Hmm.
So pretty critical information to be aware of. Again, things we never learn about, right?
There's no way this is taught in midwifery education.
Mm-mm.
No, no. And
How let's just go back to CNMs and CMs because that's what we know more about in the world of professional services and billing. What if Denise wants to find out her annual or quarterly RVUs and accounts charged? How would she do that?
you can ask you can start by asking the director of your practice. You can ask your biller. You can ask finance. It, depending on the size of your institution, is going really to depend on who you ask. But it's always best just to go up the chain of
Mm-hmm.
command.
Mm-hmm.
Go to your supervisor or your director. If you don't get the answer there, go to your biller. If you don't get the answer there, go to finance.
What
If
about the EMR?
the It depends on how much access you have. In a smaller practice, you may be able to, well, and it depends on your EMR. So in a large practice using like Epic or Cerner, you may have access to the reports and don't even realize that you do.
Where would they find it?
Well, it depends on which version of
Let's
Epic or
let's let's say
Cerner,
Epic.
but it's
Let's say Denise. Do you have
okay, it
Epic?
still depends on which version, but
There
it's
are many
typically
versions.
there
Okay.
are many versions of
Okay.
Epic.
Yes.
So it could be as simple as being on your dashboard. It could be hidden in a reports tab. It's
Okay.
typically in claims build or in
Okay.
AR report, but they're embedded in the software. Now, if you're using a smaller software that has a separate practice management feature, it's harder to find. You
Yeah.
typically you have to ask your biller to pull that information for you. But I've talked to smaller practices using third-party billers whose billers refuse to give them financial reports.
I was going to
That's
ask you about
a
that.
that's
But
a huge red flag. Your biller should be able to give you a financial report anytime you ask for them. Or one better, they should just give you access to the reports in the practice management software so you can pull it anytime you want. It's your business, it's your money.
What's the why would they hide it? Why
I
would
was
they
going to ask that. Yeah.
why?
We see it for a variety of reasons. They're behind in submitting claims and they
Okay.
don't want the practice to know. They're billing incorrectly, claims are all denying, they don't want the practice to know. They're
Okay.
billing claims under the wrong provider, don't want the practice to know. It's typically because something's being hidden that they don't want the practice to know.
Can I just say it seems like
Um,
midwives are being taken advantage of?
In all areas, yeah.
so do we have the the right to know this information? I mean,
Yes.
like, I mean, we put our name on everything. We put our NPI on many things. Um, there's so many things that on the clinical side or the practicing midwife side that we're very much responsible and held accountable for. So, what is the level of accountability for a biller and coder to the midwife?
So
Great
first of
question,
all,
Denise.
that's a
Great
great
question.
question. And do you have the right to know? The answer to that is yes. There is a CMS rule that became a federal law that states that you have the right to know any claims that are submitted in your name with your MPI number. Because any claim that is submitted in your name with your MPI number, you are responsible for. If those claims are audited and fraudulent billing was determined, you are responsible first as the provider whose name and MPI number is on that claim. Second line of responsibility is the practice. Third is the biller. Most billers have contracts that state that they aren't responsible for any claims submitted incorrectly. Um, but we have seen just in the past year was the largest takedown ever in fraud,
Mm.
waste, and abuse and incorrect billing. And there was a billing service in Arizona that was working with Arizona Medicaid and a doctor to submit fraudulent claims and get reimbursed. And everybody involved in that was fined and went to jail.
I've been practicing for a long time, and I really don't believe that I had any awareness of this until the last several years. So it has to be scary for some people hearing this about all the additional responsibilities that we really have as practicing providers. It's not just to the mom, it's not just to the family. Really it's really to everyone, the
In
insurance
Including
contracts,
companies,
yourselves.
et
we've
cetera.
seen in
Yeah.
contracts, Denise, and I don't know how many of those you came across in coaching, but there are employment contracts that will have a clause that specifically says if you are if your charts are reviewed, how whatever the verbiage is, Arden, in terms of auditing, and you are found to have submitted fraudulent codes, however, again, how they worded, I didn't pull any of those. You are legally and monetarily responsible for the paybacks. That's in an employment contract.
And I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe that that is pulled directly from the verbiage from CMS.
And that's important for people to understand is it's not necessarily the employer being bad. It's the employer saying, this is federal law and you are
Mhm.
responsible. But Denise, we get new grads who don't even understand what that means.
I mean, Ginger, I don't think it's just new grads. I think it's people that have been practicing for a very long time. Like,
Yeah.
seriously, like
Yeah.
I learned that from learning and reading the contracts, and doing the coaching more than I would have learned it from any other area.
Yeah.
And it's, again, I think we have a lot of continuing education that's always related to, medical issues or
Yeah.
any concerns that we have, but this is kind of a big one of continuing education that we should be aware of, I think, on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Well, and I have a question. Don't
Okay.
you also see contracts that say that the provider is assigning all of their billing rights to the
Oh, yes.
practice?
100%
Oh,
of them. 100%, Arden. And so what do you think that means?
I think it means additional questions to the practice. What does that mean?
Right.
Is it as simple as I'm giving the rights to the billing to you because your in-house biller or your third-party billing service is submitting the claims on my behalf? Or
Right.
is it that I'm agreeing to allow incident to billing?
Right.
Or
right.
is it that I'm agreeing that to allow you to bill every claim under my name
Right.
and none under anybody else's? But I think it warrants additional questions and responses in writing from
Do you think
the
the recruiter
practice.
knows those answers, Denise?
I'm pretty sure they have no idea what those answers would be. I mean, it's hard to know what the questions are. So, asking a recruiter to have answers to that is, I mean, they'd have to be a pretty exceptionally aware
Yeah.
recruiter
Those
to
are the
the
kinds of
practice.
questions you would want to ask the midwives or the physicians that you're working with. Like tell me more about how the services are billed for in this setting. Because I'm new or because I'm new to this state. We know from Arden that regions and commercial payers or it all varies about what the laws are. Like in Kansas, midwives get what 75, 80% of the physician provider fee schedule. You may relocate and not everything's changed, right? Because
Hmm.
it depends. Um, but I do think Arden's bringing up a really important point, Denise, that are these questions ever asked in an interview experience?
I'm pretty sure never.
Have you ever had anybody come interview for your giant practice and ask about billing and
Never. I can say 100% never.
would you
And I'm
change
not,
that? Would you
I
change that today?
would I prompt them to ask those questions?
Or should we start encouraging that, I guess? Maybe we ask ourselves that
I
question
think,
based on
yeah, it's hard to on I also on the other end, I would see that if anybody did ask in the interview process, there would be a lot of silence of like, actually, I don't really know. Um, so, I mean, I'm a little bit of aware of how it goes at this big institution I work at, but I think that question can be asked, and I think it would kind of cause a domino effect of other
yeah.
people needing to
It
ask further up the chain, which
it
I think is great. I think would
it
be a good idea.
it does
Transparency, right?
exactly, and
Mhm.
it ties directly into how much a practice, let's just say a midwife practice, I don't care what the setting is, how much the midwives understand, let's tie back to Arden, their value. What are their accounts
Mhm.
charged and what are their annual RVUs? It may not matter in that setting, but we know when it matters, shit hits the fan, the midwives have to defend themselves and they don't know how to do it.
So if you start up front knowing how much revenue you're producing for the practice, what charges are being billed, what you're not just what's being billed, but what does your AR look like? How's your accounts receivable? Is there a lot of money on your accounts receivable that's not being collected because claims aren't being billed appropriately or the payer's not processing them correctly? We're
Yeah.
seeing a ton of that right now, where the insurance companies are using more and more AI and
Mm.
algorithms in the clearinghouse to process things, and claims are short paying. And that is creating a domino effect on the AR. So if you start up front knowing how much your charges are being, how much you're billing and what your typical AR looks like, it's easier to catch
Yeah.
later if
Yeah.
a problem comes up.
You know, I go to Reddit periodically. One of my sons, Reed, sort of got me hooked on that really interesting platform where people just sort of say everything they want to say. And I got into this when I was researching several years ago about learning more about RVUs. So that's what really took me there in the first place. But new physicians are talking about this all the time because they have learned and they have a contract that explicitly ties their bonuses to their RVU or their revenue generation. And they're tracking, and by and large, most of them challenge the findings from their billing departments because they've erroneously billed, or as Denise I think said earlier, they've not billed appropriately. And so they really take it really seriously from the beginning of their practice.
I wonder,
And
Ginger, where that kind of awareness to take it seriously like comes from.
I
Since
don't know.
like I really don't think that we as midwives generally have that awareness coming out of school, as I mentioned, but I wonder if they do have some sort of, course that leads them to understand that need to do that.
well, and I think part of it is the fact that their bonuses are tied to it.
Ah,
So it's hitting their paycheck.
motivation.
Yeah.
It's
Motivation.
motivation. Yeah, exactly. It's motivation. And I think too, what some people don't realize, and I see it more in smaller practices, but I have seen it in larger practices too, that hiring a certified coder does not necessarily mean you're hiring a certified coder in maternity care
No.
or in women's health care, because certified coders are taught ortho and cardio. That's where the
Mm,
biggest need is. That's where the most revenue is.
Mm-hmm.
That's the hardest to learn because there's the vast number of codes in ortho and cardio. You're never taught maternity. You're not ever taught women's health care. Those are additional certifications and additional courses. And some of it just comes from studying the rules, reading
Yeah.
contracts, studying the laws.
Yeah.
well, I think that kind of represents the emphasis on maternity care everywhere. There's always a
Mhm.
little less emphasis, even
Yeah.
in nursing schools. It's a specialty area. It's not that important. Is that what your last credential refers to, Arden? The
Yeah, I'm a
COBGC?
certified OB coder, certified obstetrics and gynecology coder.
So not all coders are created equal. Perfect.
Yeah.
No, and like the practice we were talking about earlier, where claims had not been billed in months, they hired a certified coder who was certified in urology
Great.
to code family practice and maternity. The great thing about her is she wanted the knowledge. She wanted
Yeah.
to learn. She was taking all the steps to learn, but also realized that it's completely different.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this just kind of touches on very deep issues here.
Yeah. I mean, we
Right.
also want to be hopeful, right, Denise?
I
We
know.
want people to be able to
Yes.
go, "Oh my God, there's a whole body of knowledge now I need to learn more about. How can we help them do that?" I think we have a lot of ways, Arden, that we can
Yes.
help them do that. You want to share some of those?
Sure. Well, the first one, I'm going to selfishly plug my webinar
Absolutely.
that's next week on the 10th. It's the presentation I did last year at the ACNM conference, and we're going to talk about billing and coding in that webinar, and it'll give you practical examples of if this happens, then what? How do you code it? How do you chart it? How do you code it? How is it billed? Um, but there's a lot of different resources. We have resources on our website, on our YouTube channel. We'll have more webinars coming out this year on billing and coding. There's our conference on the business of midwifery. Um,
Yeah.
and ask the questions.
Yeah. You know what I'm thinking, Arden, as we're talking, and we don't have this product necessarily ready yet, but I think we have it partially ready. Maybe we could put together a list of the top 5 or the top 10 questions a midwife might be able to use to learn some key concepts. Some, not all the KPIs, key performance indicators, but maybe
Hmm.
some of them. Because I think sometimes, Denise, when we're talking to people, they don't even know the questions to ask.
Correct.
Correct. Well, and we have the webinar I did, or the presentation, I'm sorry, I did at Texas ACNM and then at our Kansas City conference on the top 10 KPIs for
Yeah,
midwifery billing and coding
yeah,
and revenue. And we could take questions from that to
yeah.
put this together.
And I think we have that PowerPoint, Arden. We could probably,
Yep, we have
we can
we have
link
the
that.
PowerPoint.
So we can
And
link
also
that.
inviting anybody to send in questions like we always do, if you have
Yeah.
some
Mhm.
specific questions.
I think it's important for the listeners to know that the Arden's webinar she's talking about next week, filled within 2 weeks of announcing it. Our Zoom capacity is 100 people. I actually went up to about 108 because all 100 people won't show up, but that will be recorded and available on our YouTube channel. Um, Arden, I know sometimes, usually at least once or twice a week, we refer people to you who might have questions. What are the kinds of things that you're hearing from people who we refer to you, and what do you tell them?
Um, Recently, it's been a lot of not understanding how their services are billed, whether they're being billed. One person I talked to, there's everything is being billed incident to the OB, but in talking further, going, asking the questions, looking at their state laws, their contracts, that's all appropriate because in their state,
Mm-hmm.
even though in their state requires a collaborating physician, and the contracts in that state require that claims are billed under the collaborating physician.
We should just name it, Arden, the great state of Alabama.
Oh, yes, the great state of Alabama. And it's not just CNMs that have to bill under a collaborating physician, it's FNPs
Yeah,
also.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yes. And there are states that have independent practice that don't require a collaborating physician, but Blue Cross Blue Shield still does,
There you go.
or United Healthcare still does.
Yeah.
In Virginia, United Healthcare requires that a CNM FNP doing only women's healthcare, family practice, no deliveries, that they have a physician willing to admit
Oh my
on their
gosh.
behalf. They're
Wow.
never going to admit anyone.
So
Wow.
you know what? The Virginia midwives today, they posted last night a cool short little video of going to an advocacy day today in Virginia. This isn't a legislative statutory issue. This is an insurance carrier issue. Do you have any
Correct.
suggestions on how midwives or their clients can approach the insurance industry?
So you can have your clients write letters to their insurance company. They can appeal to the state insurance commissioner to make changes. The midwives can appeal to the state insurance commissioner to make changes. But unless there's a state mandate, a state law that mandates certain things, the insurance companies pretty much have free rein to
Okay.
make the rules as they see fit. And
Have
it
you ever
comes down to who has more money to lobby.
have you ever seen the power of the people anywhere? Just curious.
Um, well, there are states that did have state mandates to mandate home birth coverage or to
Mm-hmm.
mandate CPM coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, in some of those states, the mandates are no longer part of the law. They have expired and were not renewed. And
Oh my
so
gosh.
now the
Mm.
insurance companies are no longer covering a CPM, or no longer covering home birth. But
It's constantly changing.
it's constantly changing. And you have to have somebody, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think whether it's your state chapter, for whichever organization, ACNM, AABC, whomever, somebody has to be willing to research the laws, stay on top of the laws, and know when certain things are expiring so that they can fight for change.
Boy, is that not a key statement. I mean, we're seeing that now with malpractice denials for midwives doing home birth and birth centers, even. And it's
Hmm.
a lot of it is time based. They're doing, new analysis, money's tight, cut them off.
Yep. And we're seeing too in states, I know this happened in Minnesota, and I can't remember the other state. I know Minnesota because I'm in Iowa. It's a bordering state. Pay close attention. But where malpractice companies in the dual CNM CPM practices are saying, we won't insure you because you have CPMs.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
though CPMs are fully legal, insurance companies are
yeah,
paying them,
yeah.
the malpractice carriers are saying no.
So isn't it mostly true? Let's see if she says it depends, Denise. That to be a credentialed provider on a panel, you have to have malpractice insurance.
Correct. You have to have 1 million, 3 million.
So, I mean, we're getting hit every way to Sunday, Denise.
Right, right.
For the
It's true.
independent, entrepreneur, it's very complicated.
Complicated for sure. Well, we could go on, but we probably should wrap it up here soon here.
Well, I'm wondering, Arden, do you have like one pearl of advice? What would be your call to action as you
Yes.
sort of think back? Just give the listeners one thing you would really encourage them to consider doing.
I think just in thinking about all the different things we talked about today is more knowledge on how your services are being billed.
Great,
Follow the money.
great. And we're going to give them some resources if they need help on that. Denise, what's your call to action?
Um, I am always very data driven. So I think I really want to refer back to Ginger's, breaking news, but also she probably has that call to action. But I would say like find out what you're doing. It's a little bit along Arden's line and a little along the breaking news line, but I look at data and critique data and really whether that data is correct related to what you're doing, and challenge it, I guess. Challenge it because I'm sick of numbers being put out without, some
Yep.
credibility.
Yeah.
And perhaps that's just the PhD in me, which means I'm a critic, but I hold that title proudly. So critique the data, find out the
Yeah.
data.
And
Absolutely.
ask the questions. If you don't understand the data,
Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
questions.
And mine is going to go back to that breaking news, which really surprised me because the release of this new definition is so new. To change it already and to potentially make it more restrictive for rural areas. I think what's the adage? There's like a cloak and some cover going on here. I haven't quite figured it out because this just dropped in the last 24 hours, but I'm very concerned about the new point system and if it's actually going to be of value to the communities,
Mm.
but also to the
Mhm.
providers. So,
Yeah.
I know.
yeah, it's a little nerve-wracking. Anybody working out in those areas really really needs to look at that federal registrar comment period. So, Denise, first of all, Arden, thank you for being the first co-host that joined us. We really know this is a hot topic, and we're so grateful for you and the knowledge that you share. Our
Thank you,
next
Arden.
guest, Denise, is going to be a midwife that I've known for a few years, but she's practiced over 17. Her name is Walia Early. She's had a career in a variety of settings. In fact, we just learned this week that Leslie even knew of Walia working with her many years ago. Midwifery is a very small world. Um, and this is Black History Month. I want to share that we have opened up our sixth annual BIPOC student scholarships. You can find that information on social media. And during Black History Month, we give two scholarships, which we're doing this month. And Walia is a Black midwife who is going to come on and share her experiences. And as a mentor to many people, we have referred to her. I am so honored that she's going to be with us next time, Denise. Who else are we
Woohoo.
having? Who else are we having for February or March?
Uh, this would be for March. Should we already talk about the
Maybe
March?
not. Maybe we wait.
We'll hold off.
We'll hold off.
One at a
This,
time.
yeah,
Let's
I mean,
celebrate the guests we have.
we are just so excited to be able to bring to our listeners this information. We want it to be challenging and help you find answers. So, Denise, another great day with you. And
Thank you so much. Arden, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
and we'll sign off. Bye,
We'll
Denise.
sign off. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.